Hello and welcome to Module 2, Section J of the course, all about surfaces and surface clutter. In today's lesson, I'll be teaching you why surface clutter can affect us negatively, as well as give you some strategies to help you tackle the surfaces in your home, whether that's using a clutter trap, even getting rid of certain surfaces, or designating certain purposes for certain surfaces. Let's jump right in. All right, let's talk about surfaces and surface clutter. First up, surface clutter issues. There are some different challenges that unfortunately come from surface clutter. The first key idea here is that surface clutter attracts more clutter. If you can imagine two different surfaces, let's say a coffee table. If you have a coffee table that's completely empty, you are going to be less likely to place items there than if the coffee table already has 10 things on it, because it's already kind of cluttered and each individual piece of clutter does not seem like it's as much of a big deal. So it's so important that we acknowledge that clutter begets more clutter. And it's also more likely to contribute to stress and overwhelm because we see that surface clutter whenever we are by that surface. These are all reasons why we want to make sure we tackle our surfaces in our home. Now, of course, there are many different types of surfaces, and they all serve different purposes. So first of all, what types of surfaces do you have in your home? We likely have a table, such as a kitchen table or a dining room table, maybe both. There's the kitchen counters, there's bathroom counters, there's nightstands, dressers, different shelving, there are desks, coffee tables, and even the small spaces that we might not think about, such as on top of the refrigerator. What are the different surfaces in your home? I encourage you, perhaps right now, if you want to pause this video or after this lesson, to go around your space and take a look and see how many different surfaces you have. It's also important to reflect about the purpose of each surface. Is this surface more practical? Is it more decorative? Is there a mix of these two or other purposes? Reflecting about the purpose of each of these surfaces can be helpful because it can influence the types of items that are there. For a practical example, keeping a coffee maker or a blender out on your kitchen counter could make a lot of sense if you're using that every single day and you obviously are making your coffee or making that smoothie on your kitchen counter. And decorative might be if you've got some plants or other art pieces that are on a coffee table or on top of a dresser, that sort of thing. There are some cases where it might be a mix of the two or something different, but we can use this as a lens to be mindful when we've got these different pieces on our surfaces. Are these more so for practical purposes, decorative purposes? Do I need this surface to perform both functions? It can be a way we can get to the root cause a little bit more closely. But let's go ahead and get started here. First of all, while there are many surfaces in our spaces, I recommend just starting with one. Pick one to focus on and we'll go one surface at a time. And this can also be important because some of these different tips I'll be sharing are more habitual. It's very likely you'll be able to go through and clean up this surface in a short time, but the secret with surfaces is maintenance. So I'd rather you start small and build on that than try to do too much and then feel overwhelmed and not be able to maintain it. The quick start method to make major progress on your surface right away would be to remove the items from one of your surfaces and then choose to place them in some sort of box or bag. You can, of course, return any essential items right away, but over time, only replace items as you need them so you can see what is needed and what actually wasn't. Let's say you use this process over the course of several weeks or a month. At the end of that month, see what you're thinking of the space. Do you miss those items that never came back out? Are you enjoying the way your surface is now? You can use this analysis to help you reflect about the space. And I think one reason this method can be so helpful is that by clearing off the surface, we're not saying today, you need to let go of all this stuff. That might be the outcome, but you don't have to make any immediate decisions. And it's doing it at a scale that is very manageable. If you've got a box or, a paper bag laying around, you could easily put some of these extra items in there and kind of hold on to that for a few weeks or a month. Evaluate your progress and your thoughts about this. There's really no excuses that could hold us back from starting this and experimenting to see how it feels having more open surfaces in your space. Of course, though, there are many different strategies that we can use to help prevent surface clutter. One key strategy is to make sure that each item worth keeping has a home somewhere else that is not on a surface. One of the biggest reasons clutter accumulates on our surfaces is because we're setting them down there because we don't really know where the item goes. And it's just easier to not have to make that decision and to just set it down wherever it's convenient. However, if there's a clear location or a home where that item belongs, we're much more likely, number one, to put it back right away, or number two, to not let it sit around for too long before we actually deal with it. For this, maybe you can utilize wall storage or different hooks. Maybe there's some floating shelving that could be a positive shift. Maybe you've got some other cabinet or drawer space that even opens up as you declutter other items. I also recommend that you limit items on surfaces to only those used on a daily basis. If it's not something used every day or nearly daily, and you've got another location you could store it instead, try that and see what you think. You can always try things and change your mind later. Maybe you prefer keeping these items out, but you don't really know whether you like it out or not until you put it to the test. I can speak from experience here with my kitchen. There were times where I thought it was an optimized and minimal kitchen, and then casually decided, let's move this out of the way, or let's tuck this away in a cabinet. And I kid you not, about 90% of the time, if we moved something away or off the counter, I preferred that. So I highly recommend to give it a try in your own space. You also might consider following the one-touch rule. Don't set anything down that you will have to touch later when putting it away. A great example with this is to imagine yourself coming home from work or wherever you were, and if you, let's say, are taking off a jacket or your purse, it might be most convenient to set them down on the couch or on a table or coffee table, but will you have to deal with that later? Yes. If you hang up your jacket right away, if you hang up the purse right away, if you've got spots for those, then you're not going to have to mess with them later. So it ultimately saves you time. Another great compromise when working with different surfaces is to select one surface or multiple surfaces to be off limits, and basically make it a rule that you aren't able to set anything on those surfaces. This will consolidate where your items are concentrated in your space and will also encourage you to put back items where they belong. Let's say you have several surfaces in your main area of your home, wherever you would consider that to be. If you set two of those surfaces off limits, that means you're going to be consolidating your items on that other one surface. In doing so, you're not having major behavior change here, but you're able to benefit from seeing two clear surfaces. And it's possible that the extra steps to walk over to the designated surface are not worth it. You might be more motivated to actually put items back where they belong. And if all of those items are concentrated on one surface, it's easier to say, all right, 10 minutes before bed or whenever it makes sense in your schedule, I'm going to clean off this surface completely so I'm left with a fresh, clean slate for the next day. And you're just able to work at the one location rather than needing to travel throughout your home to take a look at every surface. So that could be one helpful swap for yourself, to have these off limits areas. And if you find yourself forgetting this, you could even do a friendly reminder to yourself on a post-it note that says clutter-free zone. Let's end this section with some surface swaps and some questions to help you go to the next level when thinking about surface decluttering. First question, could you remove unnecessary surfaces from your home? Sometimes we keep pieces of furniture or surfaces around that really don't have a huge need, and maybe we'd like it better if we removed them from our space. This could especially be true for things like end tables or even the coffee table example. If you're not actually utilizing a space, could you consider letting go of that piece of furniture? Sometimes we're reluctant to give this a try, but it's an amazing way to, number one, open up a ton of space, especially if you weren't using it, and number two, be able to prevent clutter from accumulating on the top since there's no surface that you could set it on. You also could strategically use a clutter trap to contain certain types of clutter that are problematic in your space. For example, everyday carry items. Maybe it's beneficial, rather than spreading them out on a certain counter, maybe you have a little bowl or tray that you set them in when you get home from work or wherever you've been on errands. And in doing so, it keeps the rest of the surface clean because it's all contained in that one bowl or tray. Another example could be if you've got clothing that you're maybe just wearing once and can wear again before washing. If that's piling up in a certain spot of your room, maybe designate a certain location or put some sort of container that can hold these items and prevent the clutter from spreading out everywhere. It's ultimately up to you, but you can use these organizational tools to help you overall maintain a clean, clear surface, but also have a set location in mind where these different things go. You also could consider setting up a command center, which is what your next section is all about. So I encourage you to head over to that section next when you're ready to learn more about that. And finally, what items are hidden in plain sight, or basically items that you never look at, never use, or think about. Sometimes we get sort of blind to the items in our space because we're just used to them being there. But if we're not actually paying attention to them, using them at all, or valuing, they don't actually have to be there. So when you're thinking about items on your different surfaces, if you have certain decorative pieces or even practical pieces that are never used and you just forget that you have, would you actually notice if they were gone? Give it a try. Move them somewhere else, set them aside, see if you actually miss them, and if not, I would recommend letting those go. That wraps up the topics from this video, but for homework, I've got a really helpful checklist activity to help you go through some common surfaces in your space and work through them one at a time. I know earlier I mentioned just to focus on one at a time, so I know you might be tempted to whip through this entire sheet, which you totally can if you want, but you can also go one at a time on these different surfaces and help yourself have a more gradual process as you simplify those surfaces. As always, keep up the great work. You're doing wonderful, and I will see you in the next video.